Kansas City. You may have noticed we have some visitors. The NFL Draft is here. And that means we have the chance to paint the town red as we witness dreams accomplished. See hope renewed and show off a football town committed like no other. So, let's welcome our visitors with open arms and show them what Chiefs Kingdom is all about.
Now Burrow's gonna be sacked again! Chris Jones!
Because this city knows a thing or two about what rookies can do.
Jalen Watson! Pick six! Touchdown! Kansas City!
Now, it's time to do it all again as we round up our next batch of future champions.
Kansas City Chiefs select Patrick Mahomes II.
Because the truth is, the future starts now.
It has taken years to plan it. It has taken months to execute it. And in the last several hours, the epicenter of the Chiefs Kingdom has shown the National Football League world all of its splendor. Creativity, artistry, a light show in the first round of the 2023 National Football League Draft. Kansas City, of course, home of the National World War I Museum and the Liberty Memorial. It's also set in a majestic pattern and setup with the stage just north of that, outside of Union Station. Of course, all of the great things we love about the Chiefs Kingdom and its unique spirit being shown off. The cheerleaders also rumble. It feels like a game night, but it's just amazing in what is thought to be the biggest event Kansas City has ever hosted in its history. And I'll just say this. Kansas City is doing it right. It has been an incredible show thus far, including thousands of volunteers. People have put massive resources into this event, and it's just the start of things in this first round of the National Football League 2023 draft, as Kansas City getting ready to make its first selection, as we are just outside the draft room at the practice facility near GEHA Field at Arrowhead Stadium. Mitch Holthus with you, the voice of the Chiefs, along with senior team reporter Matt McMullen. Let's just start with how splendid Kansas City looks. It's almost like getting dressed up for a formal, but Kansas City has done it right.
It's been so awesome just to watch it all night long. I think it's been the best draft ever so far, and we had the chance to walk the site a few days ago, and I was frankly blown away by the entire operation, and just to see Kansas City come together and kind of celebrate the Super Bowl here again just a few months later for the world to see and to show off our city has been absolutely amazing. So Kansas City should be proud here tonight, and now let's make a pick.
Again, we're just yards outside of the draft room here at the practice facility, and we are just minutes away as the Philadelphia Eagles with pick number 30 are on the clock. The Chiefs stay put at pick number 31. They will pick and they'll have the final pick of the first round tonight. Let's just kind of recap what's happened thus far. First of all, as expected, 3 quarterbacks taken in the first 4 picks. Some interesting trades by Houston to get both the second and the third pick, but then a run on tackles. We anticipated this could happen, but from pick 6 to 27, 5 offensive tackles were taken. That, of course, affects the Chiefs, who were looking at offensive tackle. 3 corners taken in the first 17 picks, 4 corners taken in the first 24 picks, and then 4 wide receivers taken in a row. Pick 20, 21, 22, and 23 were all wide receivers. That's a National Football League draft record, but that puts us where we are right now. And, again, the boards, the edge rushers have kind of been shoved down the board here. Some tight ends as we're waiting for word of these 2 picks in front of the Chiefs. But nothing really too surprising other than maybe Houston's picks trades at the top of the draft.
Yeah, and I think the Chiefs are in good shape here. A lot of good players still on the board for the Chiefs as of now. We're following this live, as all you are, so as far as I know, these players are still available. But an edge rusher in Felix Anudike-Uzomah from K-State, he's still available on the board. A wide receiver, Jalen Hyatt from Tennessee, he's still on the board. Joey Porter Jr. at cornerback is still available. Dane Brugler, who's one of the best draft analysts out there, has him as the number 16 overall player. He's still available in this draft. and also Brian Branch at safety, kind of a nickel corner kind of player, do-it-all kind of safety. Dane Brugler's number 17 overall player. He is still available, surprisingly. So some good players still available here in this draft.
The Saints have just taken defensive tackle Brian Brzee from Clemson, who was the number 1 rated high school player when he went to Clemson. Now, he's gone through a lot in his life. He dealt with some injuries that kind of derailed him, and then he lost his sister. Very tragic. His sister had very aggressive brain cancer, and she was just 15 years old. So it's been a tough time in the recent months for Brian Brzee, but he goes to the New Orleans Saints, and talented. You and I both liked him and evaluated him. But now the Eagles are on the clock, the team the Chiefs beat in Super Bowl 57 with the pick just in front of the Chiefs, and they were able to pick earlier in the draft. So this is Philadelphia's second pick of the first round, as they were able to maneuver around and get Jalen Carter. Some thought, I'll be honest with you, he was the top player on my board as far as maybe being the best player in this whole draft. But they get Jalen Carter, and now they get another first-round pick at 30, and that will set you up with the Kansas City Chiefs pick at 31.
I have all these packets for potential picks that I made earlier today. There goes the Brian Brzee one. I'm just going to throw it out here. Hopefully we draft a guy who I have a packet for. But Nolan Smith could make a lot of sense for the Eagles. They have Hassan Reddick on one side, and that's kind of Nolan Smith's comp, a speed rusher. So Nolan Smith, who's Dane Brugler's number 11 overall player, of course, an absolute warrior at the combine with a 4.39 40-yard dash as an edge rusher. Pretty remarkable. He's still available in this draft as well. But let's see what the Eagles do. Getting Jalen Carter when they did was a steal, I think.
Yeah, and maybe the best value pick so far in this draft. Dalton Kincaid went to the Buffalo Bills at pick 25. But that leaves Miles Murphy still there. I'm sorry, not Miles Murphy, but the tight end Michael Mayer from the tight end from Notre Dame. So he's still sitting there. Also, Luke Hargrave, the tight end from Oregon State. So, and Brett Veach did not rule it out. Miles Murphy is a defensive lineman from Clemson, but the
Bengal.
He's a Bengal now, and he'll fit right in with them. But the fact that, again, Brett Veach did not rule out in his public comments earlier this week that even if there was a corner or tight end, it didn't feel like that would be a need. If he's right there on their board, don't be surprised if the Chiefs would take a tight end.
Well, that's the beauty of being the Super Bowl champion with not a ton of needs. There's areas the Chiefs could get better, of course, but when you're this good of a team and you're picking 31st overall in your home city, you have the luxury of taking the best player available. And Michael Mayer is a player I think should have been taken in the top 20. Personally, I think he's the most complete tight end in this draft. I get Dalton Kincaid already went to the Bills. He's a very good player as well, but Michael Mayer is my favorite tight end in this class and one of my favorite pass catchers in this entire class. If he's there at 31, he can make a lot of sense, and he wears 87.
Yeah.
So he have to change his number. But
yeah, that's okay. We can figure that one out. But he is a powerful tight end and a very good athlete. If the Chiefs do indeed go there. But there's choices here. This is kind of what you and I had alluded to, and really the last 3 podcasts, is the way that this draft kind of shaped up was the fact that the Chiefs, something was going to fall to them. And now they've got a choice here of several different ways they could go that would all be picks that you could see work with this team going into the 2023 season. So you mentioned it's a luxury to not have this basic glaring need, although offensive tackle some thought might be there, and 5 offensive tackles have already flown off the board. Again, that's not surprising. But there also seems to be a bit of a gap after those 5 offensive tackles to the next group that could be even well into tomorrow before those guys are taken. But still, that's one spot of need perhaps. But right now there's a lot of, like a smorgasbord of picks here for the Chiefs that you could feel excited about.
And let's talk about offensive tackle a little bit and what happened earlier tonight, because I think some of these guys went earlier than I expected.
Yeah, me too.
I figured some of these premium tackles might be available in the mid-20s. Maybe the Chiefs trade up. But Paris Johnson went 6 overall to the Cardinals. Darnell Wright, what a riser he was in the pre-draft process from Tennessee, went number 10 overall to the Bears. Peter Skoronski went to the Titans at number 11 overall. And then Broderick Jones, number 14 overall to the Steelers. And then Anton Harrison to the Jags just a few picks ago. So the depth of this class, we really think, is at edge and receiver kind of around this point. But offensive tackle, I think the way that we anticipated it going was those premium tackles are there in the first round, and maybe there's a bit of a drop-off. So We'll see what happens with the Chiefs pick here any moment, but the premium offensive tackles, it seems like to me, are off the board.
Looks like Nolan Smith is going to go to the Eagles, so you're right.
There we go. Hey, how about it?
They get the mirror for Hassan Reddick, but they're putting together
it's a good defensive
line. They
line.
lost some defensive dudes off that Super Bowl 57 NFC Championship team, but they're putting some guys back in there with Carter to go in there with Nolan Smith. So now the Kansas City Chiefs are on the clock.
All right.
And here we go.
Here we go. We've waited all night.
And it's really hard to predict it, quite honestly, of where the Chiefs could go. They could go one of 4 or 5 different directions. But again, some great choices here. Some thought maybe could trade up. I'm sure that Brett Veach was working the phones. We're not thinking they're going to trade out of this pick. I mean, we're right here at the crux of the matter. And again, some good corners sitting there, really good tight ends. Edge rushers all sitting there. Felix Anudike-Uzomah is still there. So this could go any number of places. And frankly, it's exciting. I think as I saw, for the most part, you and I would agreement, as the draft was falling through the first round, there was nothing there that really caused me a whole bunch of concern of like, hey, this is good because it's going to leave the Chiefs a lot of choices.
Yeah, I think it fell really well for the Chiefs. And this is so much fun because when you're picking at 31 overall during the whole mock draft process and pre-draft process, you can target a guy, but who knows if he's going to be there, right? Well, now we know the guys that are there at 31, and there's some really good players. Guys I've already mentioned, guys like Brian Branch from Alabama at safety, Joey Porter Jr., a corner from Penn State, Luke Musgrave, a tight end from Oregon State, Darnell Washington, a tight end from Georgia, Jalen Hyatt, wide receiver from Tennessee, LSU edge rusher BJ Ojulari. Lots of good players. Any of these guys I'd be very happy with, and we'll find out here any moment. Live with you all. We're going to find out at the exact same time.
Raiders get Tyree Wilson. What's really interesting about that, I mean, he's an impact player, outstanding, and a power kind of guy on the edge, but he's a Texas Tech Red Raider. So now
you see what Patrick tweeted at him?
No, I didn't see
He's
that.
Like, go easy on me, man, but congrats.
Hey, take it easy. 2 Tech guys need to hang together, but it's a very good pick for the Raiders, let's be honest. You put him with Max Crosby, Chandler Jones, you could argue that that's the best 3 as a group at that edge position in the National Football League. And then Dalton Kincaid, the very athletic tight end from Utah, who's got to stay healthy. He reminds me some of the more athletic tight ends in the league over the last several years, but thinner, more of a wide receiver combo type, like a Schultz, who the Cowboys had that just moved to the Houston Texans, but still a very effective weapon. But that's kind of where the AFC West is right now as we wait the Chiefs pick, and it's still a while till the Broncos will pick.
Yeah, and this show is not in the business of saying nice things about the Las Vegas Raiders, but that Tyree Wilson pick is definitely a nice one. We were making our personal board earlier today, and there was argument that Tyree Wilson could be the number 1 player in this draft, a really good player that the Raiders have now in Tyree Wilson. Everyone in the AFC West and in the AFC is trying to find their way to stop Patrick Mahomes. I don't think this will stop him either, and he has that Red Raider familiarity, but a very good pick there for the Raiders at number 7 overall, getting maybe the best player in the draft.
And as I told you, I said, Coach right now is already working on his protection scheme against those guys. But very good pick there for the Raiders. But we saw also really good players going to the NFC, like a Bijan Robinson, who I think will have the biggest impact of any player in this draft in the 2023 season, the awesome running back at the University of Texas going outside of the division into the NFC. That was good news.
And interesting to see these running backs go early in the draft because Robinson and then Jahmyr Gibbs from Alabama went to the Lions at number 12 overall. The Lions are kind of drafting like it's 1995, aren't they? They got a running back and a linebacker in the first round. It's interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, kind of reach picks if you look at them, because both those guys they took are maybe some early second-round grades or mid-second-round grades. But, hey, to each his own.
Yeah.
Stay true to your board. But, again, we are just minutes away from the Chiefs making the selection with the 31st pick. Keep in mind, you're going, well, wait a minute, why aren't the Chiefs 32? Remember, the Miami Dolphins forfeited their first-round pick with some salary cap shenanigans, so be careful there. Make sure your capologist is on your game, or you'll lose a first-round pick. But that's why the Chiefs actually get 1 pick higher than they normally would have had, being the Super Bowl champion coming back, but they will pick in at 31, and we're close.
Yeah, I suppose I'll take that extra space up, right? Because we're Super Bowl champions. The way the NFL is designed, it's all about parity. You win the whole thing, you pick last, but thanks to the Dolphins, breaking some rules. We're 31 overall. And like we've talked about this entire pre-draft process and kind of beating a dead horse here as we're waiting for our pick. But there's some good players available in this spot. And that's really not always the case at 31 overall in any draft. But the way this class has worked out, not a ton of strength at the very top, but some good depth throughout. We've talked about how maybe the strength of this class is from pick number 20 to pick number 50, and we're picking right in the middle of that.
Yeah, and we talked about this earlier tonight. We were the warm-up band for Travis Kelce at an event downtown right after the draft started. But the pick number 31, some would say, gosh, you're going to have to, you've got a first-round grade on a guy that could be a second-round type. But pick 31 is valuable, particularly when you look at where the Chiefs are in the second contract of Patrick Mahomes. We know what that means. I mean, we're seeing these quarterback contracts. Lamar Jackson's deal gets done. Jalen Hurts' deal gets done. But when Patrick Mahomes did his second contract, it put a lot of premium on making sure these draft picks hit. We have seen that now the last 2 years. We know last year's draft class was historic, truly historic in what they were able to accomplish, winning a Super Bowl with 8 defensive and special teams players playing in the Super Bowl and the AFC Championship game. That never happened ever in the history of the league. But the 31st pick, if it becomes a really valuable player like the Chiefs have been nailing here the last 2 draft classes for sure, you get the 5th-year option. Meaning you basically have, instead of 3 years to figure out if you want to invest in a player in a second contract, you have 4. And in this day and age with the Chiefs and managing their cap with Patrick Mahomes and where he's at in his career, that 5th-year option becomes way bigger than people would realize.
The reality is, once you pay your quarterback, finding players who are cost-controlled is so important. And that's where a lot of these teams that pay their quarterback and then fall off, that's the trouble they fall into. The Chiefs just won a Super Bowl because not only did they have the best quarterback in the game, but they're able to find all of this talent that's going to contribute, not just early in the draft, but also later in the draft. Got to keep doing that, though, because it's difficult to pay all your players when you're paying your quarterback a lot of money. That's just the reality of it. And you're so right. If you can get a really good player here in the first round, sure, it's number 31 overall. It's basically the first pick in the second round. 30 teams have picked before you, but still, you have that option to have them for a 5th year under cost control before they hit free agency. It's a very big deal.
Yeah, and again, we're waiting word here. The Chiefs are on the clock.
Feels like a million years, doesn't it?
It does, man. It's like we've been waiting for weeks. It's like it's here. But
earlier tonight, like through pick 19, I was like, this thing is flying by. That's the age-old mistake. It's been like 3 hours since then.
It's like, you jinxed the no-hitter.
Yeah.
Hey, we haven't given up a hit in the 7th inning. And then it just started to grind down. But it makes you think, too, that there were potential trades because some teams may be trying to get more picks in the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th rounds. And Brett Veach talked about that as far as value picks and how he loves Saturday. He loves rounds 4 through 7. But you can see maybe as you get to the bottom end of this first round that teams may be taking calls or issuing some calls here. I'm sure the Chiefs, with Brett Veach in his history, has done that, but you also have to have a partner. Now we are close to getting this pick, and this will be very interesting because it's going to be a hometown kid, I think. This is going to be exciting for Kansas City Chiefs fans of the Lee Summit Tigers in high school, and the Kansas State Wildcats, the Big 12 champions, because the Kansas City Chiefs, and quite honestly, this gives me chills. I honestly love this pick, and for a lot of reasons. Felix Anudike-Uzomah, 6'3", 255 pounds, was outstanding at Kansas State, particularly the last 2 years, and a big reason they won the Big 12. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but he reminds me in all the video that I watched, there's some Frank Clark in King Felix. And if you look at King Felix, there's power there, enough athleticism, but I think the growth curve, he's coming in, if not ready-made, he's ahead of the game. He's standing at second base because his ability to move, counter-move. People say, gosh, a player's only got one punch or two. Felix is working on his whole bag of tricks out of the hat.
You're keeping it cool right now. How excited are you?
I'm so excited because this is a great kid. I mean, this is a Lee Summit high school kid who blossomed at Kansas State. And honestly, he's right there at that 31st pick. Honestly, that's where we had him on our board. When we did our board, and this was putting in the opinion of about 4 or 5 people, this is where he was. He was slotted right in that 31 to 33 range.
all off-season long, when I was studying the draft and looking at all these available prospects, I kept thinking Felix makes just so much sense, because he's such a complete pass rusher. We talked about all these edge rushers that were available in this draft, guys like Will McDonald IV, Nolan Smith, guys that are like 235 pounds, really light edge rushers. Felix is not that. He fits the profile the Chiefs like. He's 6'3", 255 pounds, and a ton of production at K-State, as you mentioned. The 2022 Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year, a second-team All-American, just super productive, 19.5 sacks and 25.5 tackles for loss over the last 2 seasons. Played in all 33 career games, including all 14 of K-State's games last season. This guy's a beast, and I just cannot wait to see him as a Chief. How cool is this? A Kansas City native, when the draft is in Kansas City, he gets drafted to the Kansas City Chiefs.
There's some poetry here. King Felix, the comp made by Lance Erline, was Dante Fowler Jr. of the Dallas Cowboys, and I'll buy that too. There's some versatility here. Remember going back to our Defending the Kingdom a couple of weeks ago, we talked about looking through the Kingdom lens. If you look at his 2022 season, the championship year K-State had, he had 450 snaps outside the tackle, meaning he's truly at an edge, but he also has the ability. He lined up 140 snaps right over the tackle. This is part of the versatility we talked about. If you go back and watch video of King Felix and enjoy it, watch his twist against Tulane. It's a powerful move. He dominated Texas Tech. And also his rip under move, talk about his bag of tricks against TCU in the Big 12 championship game. So when you look at Felix Enyeduke-Uzama, you see a guy that was built to play in the National Football League. Okay? He's not undersized. He's not oversized. When Frank came into the league, he was the second-round pick in 2015. He was 6'3", 271. We know Frank didn't play at 271
not quite
last year. But the power that Felix has in his lower body, but his ability to do different things. The other thing I like about him, and I'm excited about this pick, is his ability to ball hawk. This dude is a ball hawk. 6 forced fumbles. That led FBS. He had 4 sacks his junior year against TCU, and that's what was given to him officially, because originally they had him as 6 sacks that would have set an NCAA record. This dude will find it. He'll get after the ball, and I think he's an awesome compliment when you look at pairing him up with George Karlaftis over the next several years.
And Charles Omenihu is involved in this as well. Chris Jones along the defensive line. Just really exciting to have a young defensive line kind of grow together. Here's a few notes from Dane Brugler, one of the best draft analysts out there, as I mentioned earlier, talking about the big-time power and strength that Felix has. He plays hard and mixes up his rush to keep his pursuit alive, which is what he does best. He projects as a physical, face-up power rusher with the impact potential to compete for an NFL starting role as a rookie. But he's more than just a power rusher, as you mentioned. Pro Football Focus wrote that he is one of the bendiest defensive linemen in this entire class. Here's more from them. Enyeduke-Uzama is one of the best edge benders in the draft class. He is the type of edge rusher that is going to convert a lot of pressures to sacks because of that. Of his 89 pressures the past 2 seasons, 21 ended up as sacks. He's one of the higher floor pass rushers in this class. Just love hearing all of that. He has all these tools in his toolbox. And another thing that you kind of alluded to, he's not a one-trick pass rusher. He has a great toolbox. All these moves he goes to, he has a plan whenever he attacks the opposing offensive lineman. He's just going to be awesome. I can't wait to get Coach Cullen with him and see what he can do as a rookie. I think he's going to have a big impact early on.
Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year. He did break his hand late. I thought it was in the Sugar Bowl against Alabama or in the Big 12 championship game, but it was very late in those games. But he did have a broken hand that he'll have to deal with here as he gets ready for the 2023 season. But this is also a Spags guy. You mentioned his ability to have this pressure on the quarterback. It's 19.5 sacks the last 2 years. But some guys will chase sacks. Mm-hmm. Felix doesn't. You watch him. He's very assignment sound. He gets it. Like, he's not going to go leave his gap or leave his assignment to get a sack, which is very similar to what George Karlaftis does. I think there's just a lot to work with here. Is he a Pro Bowler right now? No. Is he a potential Pro Bowler? He could be. And you're going to get a guy that I think is going to be a long-time, very effective professional football player, especially the position where the Chiefs needed it. This is exciting for the Chiefs Kingdom to have a Lee Summit Tiger. I wonder what Drew Lock thinks.
Yeah.
This is Drew Lock's alma mater, right?
We talked about this in the podcast like a month ago.
Yeah, he's back at Seattle now as the backup. But for you Lee Summit High fans and you K-State fans, the Chiefs' #1 pick in the 2023 draft, in a draft, you're right, said it so well, in Kansas City for the first time ever, is a young man who played high school football in Kansas City in college football at Kansas State.
And I just love when you take a guy who not only has the skill set, but also the production, because so often it's all a projection. Right? It's like this guy's a great athlete, but wasn't in a great scheme in college, didn't really see production, but we can get it out of him. Felix had production at K-State and also has that skill set that's only going to get better. I'm looking at some big boards. Daniel Jeremiah from NFL Network had Felix as the number 32 overall player. Pro Football Focus had him as the number 32 overall player, and they compared him to Harold Landry from the Tennessee Titans. If you know, Harold Landry is a pretty good player, and we could use a player like Harold Landry on this defense, and maybe we just got one.
Yeah, this is exciting. And, man, there's just
You're
a lot.
Freaking out. I know.
Well, it's just a lot of reasons. There's a lot of reasons to like him and the way he fits where the Kansas City Chiefs are defensively, what he does, how he complements the other guys, as we alluded to. Now let's set up now what happens tomorrow because we go into rounds 2 and 3 tomorrow. And again, it starts a little bit earlier. We're at 6 o'clock Central Time as we crank it up. And again, if you're headed to the draft, and we hope that you are, make sure you download the One Pass app from the NFL. But there will be events going on tomorrow at the site throughout the day. In fact, I'll be down there at our cool new Chiefs Kingdom toy. You got to make sure you see that thing, which is pretty awesome. But I'll be having some time with Tommy Townsend, Mitchell Schwartz, Trey Smith, and others. I'll get Trey's thoughts here, what he thinks, looking at a defensive on the other side, getting ready to go against him in drills and in training camp. But again, Felix Anudike-Uzomah, the Lee Summit, Missouri native and K-State Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year, is a Kansas City Chief.
We just couldn't have drawn it up better. I mean, we joked about this when we did our defensive end spotlight on our podcast like a month ago. How cool would it be if Felix stayed home? We announced a Kansas City kid as the Chiefs pick, and the Chiefs just took a really good player who also happens to be from Kansas City. He's going to play for his hometown team. They're the defending Super Bowl champions. He gets to help us go win another Super Bowl, hopefully. It's just so cool.
You remember last year, about this pick, 30th or one ahead, when we took Carl Holthus. From then till, I don't know, Christmas, Chiefs Kingdom fans were going, come on, what's he going to do as his sack dance? You know, it's the Greek freak thing.
We talked about it's this.
He's already got it.
Felix has this.
Felix already has his sack dance.
Yes.
You don't have to tweet us. You don't have to reach out. You don't have to DM us. King Felix, just watch video of this guy tonight, and you'll get fired up. The sack dance is already there, and I can see Chiefs Kingdom fans doing the dance.
And it's so great because he'll sack the quarterback. The quarterback's all upset and gets up, and Felix will like kind of put him to the side, like, wait, get out of my way. Got to do my dance. I can't wait to see it at GEHA Field at Arrowhead in 6 months.
So, again, the second round tomorrow. Let's talk about that here. Rounds 2 and rounds 3. Chiefs have one, as it stands now, they have one pick in the second. They have one pick in the third, and that's tomorrow. We're not going to get ahead of ourselves because Saturday, of course, is a full flurry of activity. But there's some thought there could be movement tomorrow. I expect a lot of movement from teams in the second round because people are looking at these, as you mentioned, in the honey spot of this draft, in the second, third, and maybe early fourth.
Well, there's some really good players still available. So Joey Porter Jr. falling into the second round is a big surprise, I think, at cornerback. Brian Branch at safety from Alabama, big surprise falling into the second round.
Mayer, the tight end of Notre Dame.
Yeah, big time. Michael Mayer falling into the second round. And Will Levis at quarterback. I figure one of these teams that needs a quarterback that didn't want to pull the trigger in the first round is going to move up to take Will Levis. Maybe Hendon Hooker as well from Tennessee. Jalen Hyatt is still available from Tennessee at wide receiver. Darnell Washington, tight end from Georgia. Bunch of good players still on the board, and it's always fun on Friday night to see these teams have a mad scramble to get the guys who were supposed to be first rounders that fell into the second round. Now, you mentioned the Chiefs have 2 picks, I believe number 63 and 95.
Yep.
So a chance to get in on the action tomorrow. I always think Friday is the most fun because there's all the fanfare about Thursday night, but Friday is when you can get some really good players. I believe the Chiefs have 12 players that were drafted in the second round that were on the Super Bowl championship team. So you can find some big-time contributors in the second round. Let's do it tomorrow.
Okay, so once again, the Kansas City Chiefs have a new edge rusher, the Big 12 Player of the Year and a Kansas City native. You got to get. There'll be kids doing it tomorrow, probably down at the NFL draft. But the Chiefs get Felix Uzama. Okay, so stay tuned. We're going to have a reaction from the press conferences here too, from Andy Reid and Brett Veach as we continue our coverage.
Right. So, with our first pick here, we are glad to welcome aboard DK Uzama. How did I do? That was good. Felix. And Felix is a heck of a player from Kansas State, defensive end. We love his ability to rush the passer and play the run. He does both very well. He's also a Kansas City native here, so we appreciate that part of it too. But most of all, a good football player. When you're picking right there at 31, you try to take the best player that's available to you on the board, and he was that guy. And so we feel very comfortable bringing him into our program. Great kid. Had a chance to hang with him here during our local pro day, and enjoyed talking with him and visiting with him there. So that time's yours.
What was the conversation like when you placed the call and, on his end, they're seeing, one area drive coming up across the car ID?
Yeah, so Brett called him initially and talked to him. By the time I got to him, he couldn't hear me, I couldn't hear him, so I was just passing the phone on. But he was obviously at a party. There was a party going on there. Yeah.
When you draft a guy like that, how much is Spags in your ear about how he fits with what he likes to do on defense?
Yeah, no, Spags and our defensive staff did a great job of sorting all these guys out. Joe Cullen is relentless with the value. He evaluates everybody. You just give him somebody. You find somebody that says defensive line on, he's going to evaluate him. That's Joe Cullen I'm talking about. So he loved him. Spags loved him, and it was pretty easy decision right there.
And what do you see as his readiness? How close is he to being able to be out right away?
Yeah, no, I think he'll definitely, be able to, bar an injury or something like that, Adam, but I think he'll be able to help us right away, yeah.
In both phases of the game? Pass rush, run down?
Yeah, sure. No, I think he can give you a good amount of snaps in both places.
Andy, how much was obviously his position as a premium position in the league? How much of your guys' thinking was attacking edge rusher in this first round versus that's just the best player that you had on the board?
Yeah, well, we kind of start there in the offensive line and check those out and make sure we're in good position in both. And we thought we could use another defensive lineman, either interior or an edge rusher or an edge player, and so he fits into that.
Do you feel like this time of year, in comparison to last year's, and I realize you might not be able to count those off the top of your head, but just that need feels maybe less severe than other times when you've been in the draft?
Yeah, I'd probably tell you yes. I feel that way. Yeah, but what you want to do is you want to bring in guys that can play, but also add great competition. That kind of makes everybody better. In particular when you're down there low. I thought Brett did a great job of staying disciplined with what the board was showing him and not going somewhere of just absolute need, So, and some of that's because we don't have a lot of those.
Fair to say you see him fitting in the role Frank Clark used to have in that Leo, kind of opposite where George played most last year?
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see where he's most comfortable, what side he's most comfortable on, and go from there. But I think he'll work in. We'll have a nice rotation there, I think, once it's all said and done.
What Joe Cullen was able to do with George last year and how productive he was down the stretch, just how confident are you that he could maybe do the same with Bull Davis?
Yeah, I think I think you get that same play time amount from him. Again, we'll just see. I mean, that's a long ways away, but we felt comfortable enough in the first round to take him and not trade ourselves out of the first round, which we had opportunities to do, but we felt we wanted to stay right there and take him.
Coach, you said when you had the local pro day, what did he do that stood out that, from the rest of the local talent that you outside go in that direction?
Well, he didn't work out. He stood right next to me. So he didn't. He came up just to kind of talk to us and didn't do his workout at that time.
Andy, last year, George Holthus was known for playing a lot of snaps, being durable in his college career. Felix seems to have the same sort of makeup, just how much of that is a benefit to the scouting and obviously getting enough tape to see what he can do for Spags and Joe Cullen?
Yeah, I think that's, that was big for that part of it. I know our guys came out feeling very comfortable about the way he plays, and I think I'm answering your question there, but I mean, I think the guys, they felt comfortable with all the stuff that they saw there, yeah.
He just turned 21 in January. How do you guys kind of see him evolving over the next few years?
Yeah,
What you know work on?
Yeah, he's young. Listen, you're going to see growth in that first year, and probably a little bit less the second year, but you'll still get some. I mean, that's normal. Again, I'd like to get hands on him before I start filling all that in, right? Herbie, are you okay back there?
I'm okay.
I mean, he just stepped right in your way to take the picture.
I know, he's okay.
Don't get upset.
You got one, Herb? I'm good.
Matt, go ahead, bud. Coach, just looking at the human element, the Chiefs just won the Super Bowl, the draft is in Kansas City, and you just took a Kansas City kid. Just how special is that?
Yeah, I think it's neat. And then, the draft's right here in Kansas City. I know the people down at the draft were excited. We had it on the TV, and they were fired up about it. So Kansas State, Kansas City, it's and then the draft. I think that's a real positive. I was proud of our fans. I mean, they showed up like crazy today down there. That was a neat deal.
Andy, you said you had opportunities to trade out. I mean, did you seriously consider that? I just wondered if Clark had any, pull in that situation to want to announce that first round pick down there.
Yeah, well, I don't think he would have risked that, if we felt like we wanted to trade out. So, but you get to that point, and people, if you're that pick, you're going to have opportunities to trade out. And so people were calling us. But again, we felt very comfortable taking them.
You good? All right, thank you.
All right, good. Yep.
All right, well, appreciate you guys sticking around. It's one of those good problems to have when you have to wait to the end of the draft to make a selection. But needless to say, we're excited to add Felix to this roster. And just want to first give a shout out to the amazing fans that filled the streets downtown. What an awesome sight, what an awesome night for Kansas City. You know, all the feedback I got from all the NFL members downtown working this game, they couldn't be more excited for the turnout tonight. And again, quite an exciting night for us, and excited to add Felix to this roster. And with that, I'll take your questions.
What was the conversation like when you first, called him and, he sees one area of draft coming up on his caller ID?
Oh, no, he was super excited. And, it's one thing, obviously, just to get drafted in the NFL, but then to have a local kid to get that call on draft night while the draft's being held in Kansas City, needless to say, he was really excited. And, obviously the conversation went really well.
Right, what jumps out to you as a prospect looking at him over the last 2 years?
Yeah, well, we had a chance to see him obviously for playing right down the road there in Manhattan. But one of the younger guys in the draft too. I think he's just turned 21, and he's done nothing but grow and develop. Throughout the last couple of years, and we're excited for Steve and for Joe Cullen to get their hands on him now and continue that growth and trajectory uphill. But again, anytime you can add a premium position, one of the youngest players in the draft, and have that to work with for a long time is something we're excited about.
You guys rotate your linemen a lot. Just how confident are you that by maybe day one you could get into that regular rotation?
Yeah, no, I feel real good, especially about not just the prospect, but the coaching staff we have. I mean, those guys, great teachers, great coaches, and we had an opportunity to spend a lot of time with Felix. Again, being so close. So again, Joe's excited, Steve's excited, and I think he'll come right in here. And having him next to George now for the next handful of years is something that those guys will quickly develop a bond. And they'll be a good 1-2 tandem there for the next few years.
You mentioned when you guys got on the clock, was he the clear-cut top guy left on your board? Was there a group there that you had to choose?
No, he was the top guy. And, we did have some calls, and I think maybe Coach mentioned that. It's a situation, though, when you have a guy that is, clearly the top guy left, and then, the calls that we had were, you're talking mid-40s. It's a long way away, and then you're going to end up just trading those picks to try to get back up and get a guy like Felix. So we thought, let's not get cute here. There's a guy we like, a position that we need, and we'll just go ahead and make the pick, and certainly glad we did.
What about possibility of trading up earlier in the round? How close? Were you close at all?
We had conversations, and some of the teams that we spoke to earlier in the day, I mean, the price was pretty steep at the time, and then there was a window, I think, minus the Bills moving up 2 spots with the 4, there was conversation that we had with teams, but when it was their time to pick, they were staying. They weren't trading. So, Jacksonville had that small move with Buffalo there at 4, and the teams around, they were not interested in trading. And then teams higher than that, the asking price was a lot. And having picks the next couple days, having a 2, 3, 2 4s, we still want to deal in volume here. We want to get some good players, and we just thought it was the best to keep those picks and to have Arsenal the next few days.
Right, you mentioned just the premium. You mentioned just the premium position. Did you go into this draft saying got to get an edge rusher in the first X amount of rounds or anything?
Well, I think just looking at our roster, I mean, there were check boxes that we wanted to address throughout the weekend, and whether that was defensive end or a skill position or offensive line or what have you, we just wanted to come away with one of those premium positions right off the bat and then work from there and see how the board goes. But again, when we were sitting there at 31, I mean, he was the top guy on the board, and it made that decision easy.
So did he rise up your board specifically because of your need or because of his position?
Well, he was on. Or are you asking if he rose as the draft was going on, or no?
Even before the draft,
yeah.
Was it more based on where your need or just the player himself?
Really, the player himself. We're going to set our board, and our board is going to stay locked in, and then we're just going to follow the board. And then when we get to our pick, I mean, it's pretty easy. I think when you sit that board and stay true to it, and when you get to your pick, you're faced at a decision of take the highest guy on your board or trade down, and again, then you're looking at a scenario where you're just probably trying to trade back up to get the same player. So he was a top guy on the board. He was positioned in need, so it made sense at the time, and again, certainly excited for the next few days and the additional picks we have coming up.
Brett, how do you feel now about that group of guys you have on the edge?
Yeah, no, I mean, listen, it's a good group. We got a lot of young guys now. We brought in Charles, and we have some flex with Charles, and now we have George. Felix is in there, and certainly with Chris. Turk Wharton's coming back from an injury now, so we're excited to get him back, and he looks good. So, again, you can't have enough depth on that defensive line, and that's something we're always gonna look to add, and so we're excited to add Felix tonight and get ready for tomorrow and for Saturday.
Brett, you mentioned some of the excitement from Joe and Spags about getting Felix. What is it about Felix that excites them, and even what excites you about having him on this program?
Just the motor, the relentless effort. Again, a guy that had a ton of production at Kansas State, and as I mentioned, just turned 21. So a majority of this production was coming in a big time conference at 19 and 20 years old. So I think every year he's been there, you can see the growth and development, and being so young, still think there's a huge window for him to continue to grow and develop. And we're excited that we get him at this stage of his career and being so young. Got a lot of years to work with him and continue to grow and develop him.
Brett, it seemed around, Andy credited you for having discipline tonight. How difficult was it to maintain discipline?
Yeah, it's one of those things where you're just trying to calculate, and when you're on the clock there, and teams are trying to trade up there right at the end, just trying to read the board. And I think it wasn't that hard, just because again the trade offers were so far down in the mid 40s, where you just try to quickly do the math in your mind and think about the board and how it's likely to play out tomorrow. Just the fact of the matter was, it was just a matter of us having to use a lot of those assets to go right back up. And sometimes when you get too cute, you just miss out on a good player. So we just wanted to sit there and do what made sense, and that was just make the selection.
How many guys did you have first-round grades on this year? And was Felix one of them?
I think we had, a handful of guys, 16, 18 guys, and, Felix was right up there in that list. I mean, these lists are different depending on whether or not you count the quarterbacks, right? So, we have a little different model that we use just to kind of project where guys are going to go and what we're going to do. But, I think all these teams, by the time you get to the 20s, you're picking on guys, though, that, if they're not first-round value picks, they're high twos. So, these drafts turn into, first-rounders are 15, and then even the picks at, 25, 28, 30, they're right there. So these values are all the same when you get to pick 31.
Fred, it seemed like around 20 there was that wide receiver run, and then a pretty meaty positional fit maybe for the Chiefs.
Mm-hmm.
That how did the strategy change maybe like during that point? Was there temptation to maybe overspend and try to get someone in that window?
Yeah, I mean, it like you said, Pete, the run was there with the wideouts there, and we had gotten out in front of that, though, and I think we kind of knew where the market was, and obviously, there were a few teams that were up there that were AFC teams, and they weren't interested in talking to us and trading with us. And after you get locked out of there of not being able to trade, then it comes into we will do it, but it's going to be the asking price is going to be even more than what you would think. So just one of those things that you just got to stay disciplined and know that the object is to fill out a deep, talented roster, and you have to work with the strength in numbers. And obviously, our guys do a great job of identifying talent throughout the course of the draft. And so I think that's the part of just being disciplined there. You could be too aggressive at times, but when teams want. It's a little bit tougher sometimes when you're dealing with teams in certain positions that are in your division or conference or what have you, or teams that you're likely to play that, the asking price may be more. So, we were aware of that, and then it was just a matter of, doing what made sense for our team in the long run.
Brett, he seems like a pretty durable player given the last 2 years. I just wonder if that was an element of it too, and if the medical situation was minimal, I guess, compared to maybe other prospects available.
Durable, healthy, young, and again, a guy that plays a premium position, a guy that has continued to grow and develop, and again, had a lot of exposure of seeing him a ton and got a chance to meet with him on multiple occasions. But certainly that played into it. And again, a ton of production for a guy that really did the bulk of that work at 19, 20 years old in those big-time conferences, going against some really good tackles the last couple of years. I mean, a lot of these guys have gotten drafted early and played early, and they've had success in the NFL. So, sky's the limit there, and with our coaching staff, we're excited for him to come in here and continue this upward trajectory.
Last one, Herb.
Coach, Brett, with first round in the books now, and then you just reset your draft board for day 2 of the draft. What would you say your priorities are going into day two, specific to wide receiver and maybe even offensive tackle?
Yeah, I think with, maybe, Herb, you can make a case for other than linebacker. I think, again, I've been down this road a few times, and you may go into a season and thinking that you're good at a position. Then, a couple of years ago, I think our first Super Bowl run in 19, we lost 3 defensive ends, within the matter of 3 or 4 weeks. So you got to plan and prepare for a 20-game season, hopefully. And I think when you have that mindset, these guys that line up and start week 1, they never end up, being the same starting lineup week 17, 18, 19, 20 into the playoffs. So, other than positions, I think that we just have numbers and there's just not enough play time to go around. I think, anything's on the table, whether it be offensive line, more defensive line, cornerbacks, receivers, and that's where I think you just stay true to the board. And when you have a guy that, when, the value fits where you're picking, and, other than you can make case for linebacker, I think anything would be on the table for sure.
Go ahead, Brad, last week I believe you mentioned about the wealth of defensive backs in this year's draft, and just listen to that from what you said. Obviously, you spent a lot of premium on defense and defensive backs last year. Is that still in your thought process, the position of need as it relates to depth that you talked about?
Well, I think it's an opportunity where it's a one of those, premium positions, and I think you're going to find a lot of guys that are super talented and come in right away and not just make the team, but push for playing time. So anytime you have one of those positions and you have a lot of depth in numbers, and I don't think you discount, well, maybe you need another this or that when you have a guy that you think is, like tomorrow if we're picking at 63 and there's a guy that, we felt is a second-round talent cornerback and, he's on the board, I think, you'd stay true to the board just like we did tonight.
All right, thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks.